welcome to the Machines and Molecules podcast. I'm Ingmar, your host. Machines and Molecules hosts guests that have backgrounds in chemistry, biochemistry, and machine learning. And our guest today is Markus Müller from the cluster Industrial Biotechnology, abbreviated CLIB. Markus has a background in Molecular and Applied Biotechnology and is a project coordinator at CLIB. Welcome, Markus.
Thank you, Ingmar, for the invitation. It's nice to be here, and welcome to the audience.
How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
Super. So you work for CLIB, and I think this idea of a cluster is foreign, especially to people coming from classic machine learning applications. Can you explain a bit what this cluster is doing for the biotech industry?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sure. So we at CLIB are, as you said, in a cluster, and that's also an association, but maybe a bit different to like classical industrial associations as you have them, for instance, in the automotive industry. So especially in innovation-driven new technology sectors like the biotechnology or also AI, those clusters form and have the aim to link different sectors and different disciplines on one topic. So we are in the cluster working cross-sectoral on a specific topic. That's like the core definition. And companies, for example, also Exazyme is member of CLIB, and the members of the cluster are open to work together, to collaborate with other members of the cluster, and to perform like open innovation developments.
So it's not a lobby organization, like to have a very basic understanding of what it doesn't do, right?
So no, we are not a lobby organization. We are not also not paid by political parties or something like that directly. So we represent our members, sometimes also towards policymakers, of course, but we are not a classic lobby organization.
And why is it necessary to work on innovation in a cluster? How is this cluster thing different from just working as a service provider and a client?
So especially in emerging technologies, it's sometimes difficult for startups or small companies to get in contact to potential users or collaborators. And that's a point where clusters can bring a large help to them, because they bring, for example, the AI establishing or developing companies in contact directly with the end users of their technology. So we are also acting like a neutral mediator between those different interests and parties. And we are also setting up a lot of platforms in forms of events that we organize where our members can meet and directly exchange with each other.
And why is it so difficult? Why do biotech companies not just turn to AI companies and say, can you do X, Y, Z for me? Is it just because it's such different backgrounds that these people often have?
Yeah, so that's part of the topic here. So maybe it's not only between the interaction of AI and biotechnology, but between, for instance, biotechnology and other industrial fields where biotech processes can be applied, or AI companies and the sectors where AI processes or algorithms can be applied. So that's a hard to establish collaboration, because in some way you have to explain to your customer company what your technology is bringing them as benefit, but you don't have usually like the classical chemical industry that has their classical established processes, and you cannot easily come as biotech company and say now, well, I will replace all your processes by biotech processes. So that doesn't work. And therefore, you need to know the right people and the right departments in those classic established industries, and to get in contact with them and show them what your technology can perform. And so that's a way where biotechnology and AI, I would say, are on a similar level. So you need those platforms for AI companies or biotech companies to get into contact with established industries and the right divisions. But of course, AI and biotechnology are also strongly interwoven. So a lot of biotech processes can be established or optimized by the use of AI. And in that context, I would say it's also very important to have actors or companies like you in our cluster, and to bring you in contact with the other side of the application.
And then once so as I understand it, CLIB is called Cluster Industrial Biotechnology, but there's actually actual working clusters that you do establish. And what does work in a single cluster like that look like? How do companies then interact?
Yes, so we at CLIB, we are already active for over 15 years in that field. And over that time course, we established a lot of useful tools or practical guidance. For instance, we are organizing webinars where our members or also companies and stakeholders beyond our membership can present their technology, what they are offering and doing, and we get on a very deep technological level in exchange with our members. And there are those webinars, for instance, but we are also organizing a lot of face-to-face meetings, full-day networking events. We have once a year a 2-day conference hosted here in Düsseldorf, because we are convinced that the personal exchange, especially also on face-to-face level, is very important to be able to network and to build trust, but also understanding towards each other. And to form the first connection, it's much easier to do that in person than on a virtual level.
And then in the projects, what kind of projects, for example, come out of this?
Yes, so it differs very much on the specific need of our members. So in some cases, we are just bringing two partners in contact with each other, and they start talking to each other, establish a project idea or a collaboration idea, and then they move on by themselves. In other fields, we or our board decides for specific important focus topics that are important for a large majority of our cluster members. And in those cases, we as CLIB office to also participate in like funded projects on national or also European level. And that is a very, very interesting work, because in these cases, we are also very deep in the biotech application and application development.
Okay. Can you say a bit? Okay, you mentioned Exozyme as one member, but who, for example, are other members, just so that the audience has an
Yeah,
idea of who's part of CLIB?
sure. So we are an international network of around 115 companies. So that's not all from industry. There's SME, there's large industry, but there's also a lot of academic partners and like the infrastructure around. So we have patent attorneys, we have also investors in our network. So we try to build a network of all expert knowledge that you need when you want to establish a biotech business.
Okay. And we've talked a lot about biotech. Why do we need it at all? Why do we need this bioeconomy? We have been able to do chemistry before, right? But yeah, what is different about this?
So that's like the core of our motivation or our vision, what we work on as a cluster. So yes, for sure, you can say we have the established chemical processes and that's it. But we have the vision that by the application of biotechnology and the establishment of a circular bioeconomy, we can at least assist towards a transformation of our industry from fossil-based feedstocks towards renewable feedstocks. And yeah, by renewable, maybe that's already an important definition to make. A renewable that does not necessarily mean biological
Mm,
resources.
mm. So while it's called bio cluster for industrial biotech, it's you would say that the bio part is not the most important part, but the renewable part is actually what's decisive here.
Yes, exactly. So biotechnology per se is not biological origin. For sure, a lot of processes that we are working on are using biological feedstocks, that's such as from the forestry or agricultural side streams or other industrial side streams of biological origin. Um, but maybe to give you a brief example is that you can use carbon dioxide as a feedstock for biotech processes to build up larger molecules, and it differs from a regulation perspective if this carbon dioxide is coming from a renewable feedstocks, so for example from a biogas plant, or if it's coming from an industry that is not per definition biological resource, such as, for instance, a waste incineration plant. These sources are also not preventable. We will always have some fractions of waste, for example, that we have to burn, but the definition of biological origin does not make sense in this context.
Mm.
And also,
Yeah,
if you capture carbon dioxide from the air, you don't know where it comes from, most probably from any fossil-based process, because at some stage it was burned.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, you said side streams from agriculture. Um, to people that are not coming from biotech, is, what does side stream mean?
Mhm. So it's simply what is left over from the main thing you want to produce. So, for
Mm,
example, when you go on an agricultural field, you get the grain from the field, but all the straw or large fractions of the straw cannot really be used, or at least not be used in these quantities. In some cases, they can be used as animal feed, but there are also a lot of resource streams that cannot really be used and that are incinerated, so burned, converted to energy. That is in most cases done, but that's not the best way to use a material that was already built by sunlight, photosynthesis, and a lot of energy that was put in.
mm. Okay, so straw, for example, another thing I think that's currently trending very much is lignin. So basically, side streams from forestry, and when you use trees, that you have this lignin left over, which is a nice feedstock, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a nice feedstock, and in the classical chemical conversion of those leftovers from the forestry industry, um, you have always problems to get rid of the lignin because it prevents the utilization of other fractions of the wood leftovers.
Mhm.
And so biotechnology can there, for instance, jump in and provide solutions to convert, to use these lignin fractions in a positive way and not to treat them as waste, but as a resource.
Yeah. Okay. And since we are with this current trend of lignin, or maybe it's an older trend, I'm not sure. What do you see as the trends going on in the biotech industry and bioeconomy at the moment?
It's a large question. So I see that, well, biotechnology as a technology is developing and has been started to develop many years ago, and there's already quite a large history. So we started maybe with very small niche applications, but I think biotechnology has grown up and is now at a stage where we can really think about what larger fractions of resources can we transform with biotech processes, and especially what fractions or what fossil-based production processes can be replaced with the help of biotechnology by renewable feedstocks.
Mm. And is there a particular, is there something very concretely that you can say about this? Like what fractions that have been done with fossil fuel are now attacked by different players in the industry to do a biotech process for them?
Yes, so for instance, when you look into the plastic sector, so polymer sector, there from history, most of the materials were fossil based. So you have the classical fossil plastics, and many of the raw materials that are used there can be converted or can be transformed into bio-based feedstocks or resources. So in that case, so the best case scenario is that you have like the same monomer that you can manufacture and produce products out of that you had before, but the origin is different. And in that field, already quite a lot is evolving. You have PHA, PHB, for instance, that are commonly used monomers for polymer synthesis, and those can also replace the conventional plastics.
So basically, what people call bioplastics, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You make the same source material out of which the polymer is then produced, but now using biotech-based processes that are more sustainable than fossil-based processes.
Exactly, and in some cases you can even increase the functionality of your product. So for plastics, for example, it's very important if they are rigid, if they are resistant to heat, etc., if they are flexible. So depending on your application, and there's also the potential that by biotech processes you develop completely new polymers that also provide new functionalities that you would never be able to achieve by classical chemical synthesis.
Yeah. And I think one of the other very en vogue topics, I'm not sure how close it is to production grade quality, is also degradation of polymers, right? PET degradation in the ocean, basically. I think that's one of the visions. Yeah.
So yeah, that's also a big topic when you talk about bioeconomy. That does not only mean building up new material, but also closing the loop and recycling the material streams that we have. So not to end up on a landfill or in a waste incineration, but to collect, for instance, plastics. I think especially in Germany, the recycling system for plastics is already really on a good state. But what do we do with these plastics? And to be able to produce new products out of these collected wastes or collected plastics, there also enzymes or biotechnology can play very good role. Yeah.
We're talking about, I mean, we're breaking down these complex topics into very bite-sized chunks here. How do you communicate with politics, for example? I think the problem probably that you have is that you have to break down into bite-sized chunks again and again. What is your recipe to do that?
So there's no patent recipe, of course. But yeah, in the end, you have to communicate a lot to a lot of different people. You have to understand whom you are talking to what level of expertise can you go up, and also to find like the main message or a common knowledge or a common language. So if I'm talking to a politics that has done something completely different his or her entire life, then I cannot come and talk to him or her and talk about very technical details. That doesn't make sense. So I have to understand what is my my partner of the conversation able to catch, and what is like the level of information or detail that I can give. And if that's very low, and in many cases that's the case, then how can I catch the very core of what I want to achieve? So it's not a simple task, of course, but what I also experienced is that often when you're in a bubble of experts, you tend to bring in more information, more details, etc. But that doesn't help in the end. So also in those expert fields, it sometimes helps to bring a very brief and simple message.
Mm. Yeah, I was about to say, does it
Mhm.
ever make sense to go to a technical level with outside of a project in CLIB? Like if you communicate with policymakers, I mean, even when I communicate with very technically minded people, just because they're in a slightly different um, niche of expertise, um, communicating the summary level is always seems to me to be more helpful most of the time than going into technical detail.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's also part of our role at CLIB. So in those projects where we are part of and we are actively one of the project members, we also do a lot of communication and translation between the different partners, and always trying to catch the main core of what someone is telling or wanting to tell, and trying to rephrase sometimes, to summarize what was said, just also to be clear that the communication is done properly and that the right information is getting towards the partner of the communication.
Mm. And so we talked about how to communicate. The next question is what to communicate. What are the challenges currently for biotech industry in your view, on the EU level maybe, or on the national level as well?
Yes, so communication, as you said, is, I think, key to bring more innovations to the market. So, as I said in the beginning, biotechnology, also, I think artificial intelligence has sometimes the problem that it's a too complicated technology to be easily understandable and spontaneous understandable. So breaking down the main message and finding the right people to talk to, I think that's a very important task for both topics. Um, and yeah, so what in my view very much helps is, for instance, the participation in clusters networks like you do at CLIB, just to get in contact with those people. Because if you're just sitting in your office and shutting down and hearing nothing from outside, then it's very hard to do marketing for your technology and to disseminate your technology and to bring forward your offers, because no one understands them. It's much easier if you have a direct contact and direct exchange.
Yeah. And would you say there's some very concrete things that it would be better to change on a regulatory level in the EU, for example?
Mm, yes, so regulation is like a sword with two sides. So on one side, it helps also to set a certain standard and bring certain quality and also safety for industry. So it sets the framework in which an industry can establish a new technology or innovation. On the other side, there, especially on European level, I think we all know the examples. There are a lot of regulations that are very detailed and
Mm,
I think not really targeted to the original purpose. And I think those regulations need a lot of review and adaptation. One example I was talking about earlier already, which is the definition of renewable carbon versus biogenic carbon.
mm,
Another topic I think that also everyone has heard about already is the definition of GMOs, so genetically modified organisms. The
mm,
definition that the EU is working on is already really old and could really need a review because the
mm,
technology has proven to be safe. And for sure, there have to be certain criteria and certain standards to be met, but in the way those regulations are right now, they are more like a blockade for innovation and development.
mm. Okay. Yes, it seems. Yeah, I don't know. Personally, I'm a big fan of this of the carbon tax system in the EU because it's very flexible. It gives a flexible framework and doesn't dictate the details of what has to be done, rather than, I don't know, um, prohibiting short distance flights, uh, which seems like a regulation that would age not very well as compared to just setting a system where everybody has an incentive to cut down on CO2 emissions, like the carbon tax system.
Yes, in a way, I can understand what you mean, but it can also be difficult when the system develops in its own way. For instance,
Mm,
with this tax system, there's a lot of deals that are made between different companies. One saying to save certain amounts of carbon dioxide, and then the very energy intensive industry, for instance, is not caring so much about that topic at all. Um, or like also when you do regular flights and you can always pay for compensation for the climate. Yeah, it's
mm.
I think kind of greenwashing because in the end it would be much more helpful if you don't fly.
That's absolutely true. Wouldn't that be solved by just increasing the carbon tax?
Yes, but I think that's a very powerful tool for steering from the political side, and this has
Mm,
to be, yeah, used very, very carefully because
mm,
there are a lot of side effects that you cannot really foresee how our economy would react on that. For
yeah,
instance, yeah, we've seen in the pandemic that it's also good to have a resilient ecosystem and a resilient economy. And by just raising these tax enormously, you would have like a change of your economy and energy intensive or very carbon dioxide producing economy would simply go to other parts of the world, but
yeah,
that would not solve the problem itself.
absolutely.
And on
Yes,
the other hand,
absolutely.
you're dependent as a society then on those regions where these industries go to.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, it doesn't have any sense increasing a carbon tax in the EU and then all the industrial players go to Asia somewhere where they don't have to pay the tax, but still
Exactly. Yeah.
emit the same CO2. Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely. Okay, and maybe to change gears towards the end of the episode, the theme of Machines and Molecules is for the guest to bring a third M word. Have you thought of a third M word?
Yes, I have, and my M word is match. It's like two sides. One you can already imagine about the talk that we had. So core of my professional work is to make matches and to match partners and stakeholders from different disciplines with each other and to bring them in contact when they would never have found without. And the second is more a personal thing because I'm an enthusiastic player of board games. So in those board games, you of course have matches with your friend and exchange socially, but also on the game. And I love, establishing strategies how to win.
That is funny. I think you are now the third person with a biotech background that I hear of that is very much into board games. My colleague Lucas is very much into board games. I think I heard it of another person last week, and now you as well.
Yeah.
Do you think there is something similar in those two things? Because maybe it's coordinating very complex things to work together.
Yes, I also thought about that a lot already. I think it's not necessarily a similarity, but a contrast, because in our work in biotech, I think in AI it's similar. There's a lot of very complex problems that you don't know if there's a solution, and you don't know if you can get where you want to. And on the other side, board games provide a very limited set of rules, very defined situation, and there after a certain time it's over, and that it's closed in some way, and there's some kind of solution or optimal path that you're for sure trying to find. But yeah, in the end, it's done at some point, and
Okay. So it's relaxation from the complexities of the real world.
maybe yes.
Okay, interesting. Yes. Yeah, I mean, games have been a mainstay of AI research, I would say, in the 2010s as well. Computer games, that is, but it was a great way to get basically data, like to interact with a somewhat complex world and be able to give input to a computer game and learn how to get high scores. So that's also quite interesting. I think as a connection to AI, where it's simpler to play a computer game as compared to, I don't know, control biochemical reactions or maybe even fusion reactor plasma in
Yeah,
other cases.
and I think also like the chess computers were one of the drivers for computational power and also AI development, right?
Yes,
Already in the, I
exactly.
don't know, 80s or whenever it was,
Yeah, I think
earlier.
90s was probably the time when IBM Deep Blue bet Kasparov, and then but that was still like brute force computation, and
Yeah.
later on for Go that wasn't possible anymore. Yeah, super. Thank you, Markus, for the very enjoyable talk about the about CLIB and the biotech sector in general. And looking forward to seeing you at a CLIB event.
Thank you very much for hosting and the talk. And yeah, thank you.
Super. Bye bye.
Bye.